Raise your hand if you like kids. Well, I like kids too, which is a good thing because my day job is to be the head of a school. But in particular, I like this kid. This is my son, Emerson. So I've done the math, and Emerson will be graduating from college, hopefully, in 2034. So when I think about education, I frame it in what schools should look like to prepare Emerson for the real world when he graduates. So I'm going to start off with a few assumptions. First, you agree it's our responsibility as a society to prepare Emerson for 2034 and beyond. Second, you agree that in the economy of tomorrow, all young people must learn to be innovators. And third, you agree that the traditional model of education is failing to achieve that goal. Now, if you don't agree, let me suggest Ken Robinson's TED Talk, Schools Kill Creativity. It's the most watched TED Talk of all time with over 40 million views. But actually, I think I can prove it to you. There's another TED Talk about a popular team building exercise known as the Marshmallow Challenge. Teams of 4 have 18 minutes to build the tallest freestanding structure possible out of spaghetti, string, and tape so that the marshmallow rests on top. And what's fascinating about the Marshmallow Challenge is that certain groups tend to perform better than others, and among the very best are recent graduates of kindergarten. The punchline is that 5-year-olds are naturally resilient, creative, empathetic, and really good at solving problems. But then as they move through their educational journey, they actually get worse at the Marshmallow Challenge. Now, that might seem counterintuitive to you, but as a career educator, it actually is pretty obvious to me. You see, the traditional model of education is all about standardization. So as students get more educated, they actually lose some of their natural passions and proclivities in the name of college readiness, at least as determined by standardized tests. So as the head of a school, I'm often asked what I think about the American education system, and I often cite the Marshmallow Challenge and say that I think schools should be a place where students like Emerson have their innate qualities and attributes enhanced at school. In other words, I think schools should be a place where students get better at the Marshmallow Challenge. I think that's hard to argue with, but of course the tough question is how do we get there? And at this point we know how not to get there. From fancy technology programs to billions of dollars in new school facilities, national education reforms, a focus on STEM education, and an obsession with data in the name of teacher accountability, we have failed to engage students, achieve our desired outcomes, or reevaluate the fundamental purpose of education. In other words, we've wasted a lot of time, energy, and resources, and we know it. 80% of Americans give a C, D, or F grade to the nation's schools. But the consensus that the system has to change hasn't evolved into consensus of how to change it. Parents default to the system that they're familiar with, schools are afraid of being the lone wolf, and even the most creative teachers feel handcuffed by standards that they're held accountable to for pay raises or even job security. Now, flipped classroom is one strategy that has caught on. Basically, teachers record their lectures and have students watch them in the evenings so that class time can be used for more engaging projects and activities. Technology has made flipped classroom a reality, at least in communities where most students have internet access outside of school. For those of you familiar with Khan Academy videos, it's a perfect example of how flipped classroom has been able to become so popular. Now, as a recovering U.S. history teacher, I use flipped classroom with my students and found class time way more interesting for me, and I'm sure way more interesting for my students, compared to that typical image of me lecturing, them passively taking notes, and all of us staring up at that clock waiting for the bell to ring. But the problem with flipped classroom is that while the delivery method has changed, the goals and outcomes really haven't. It's still about short-term retention of information to prepare for some kind of artificial assessment. In other words, with flipped classroom, the content is still at the center. And I want to put kids at the center. After all, in the 21st century, it's not about the content you know, it's about the skills you have to adapt and to innovate. Let me give you an example. Last week, I saw a job posting for a global change practice leader at a Fortune 500 company. Global change practice leader. The word change was used 11 times in the first paragraph of the job description. Now, 20 years ago, we would never have imagined a job title like Global Change Practice Leader, and the rate of change keeps getting faster and faster. So try to imagine what kinds of jobs Emerson's going to be applying for in 2034. And do you really think Flipped Classroom or these other initiatives that we've tried are going to fundamentally shift the way we prepare our students for a world in which information is everywhere and the skills of innovation are what will determine success? So here's my idea. Instead of just flipping the classroom, I say we take it a bold step further and actually flip the entire school day. Time is the most important tool we have in school, so I say let's use it better. What if we stop focusing on bells, consistent class periods, a schedule that looks the same since the early 1900s, and standardized assessments packaged in this outdated definition of rigor, and instead mainstreamed and integrated extracurricular activities into the core school day? The result? Deeper, more experience-based learning, the development of 21st century skills, and making school a place where our students were actually excited to be. Let me see if I can help you understand with a couple of contrasting examples. When we were first married, my wife coached the mock trial team at her high school alma mater. I remember her coming back from that first practice session. She said, "Jarin, you won't believe it. The only time the kids can get together is 7 p.m. on Sundays. It seemed crazy to have practice at school that late, so I just invited them to do practice sessions at our house." Well, I immediately envisioned 50 teenagers packed into my living room while I was trying to watch Sunday evening football. But in reality, there were only 9 students on the mock trial team that year, out of a high school of over 500 kids. Well, why so few? And most of you have heard of mock trial. It's a very well-established program. And I'm pretty sure more than 2% of the students at that school had an interest in pre-law when they headed off to college. But as we all know, extracurricular activities like mock trial are often bypassed due to the ever-increasing demands and rigor of college prep academics. Shouldn't we be rethinking a system where an 18-year-old student who has a real interest in the law and who wants to pick up some of these skills like collaboration, communication, resilience, and empathy is passing over an opportunity like mock trial? Well, anyway, I got over my disappointment about the size of the team and actually started to participate in these sessions myself and found it to be a really terrific way to spend my Sunday evening. But I would notice something, that week in and week out, there'd be fewer than half the team there. And when I'd ask one of the other students, well, where's everybody else? I'd hear the same thing each week. The majority still at home, cramming for that Monday morning advanced placement test, or working through more and more calculus problems that research shows fewer than 5% of the workforce will ever actually use. Now contrast this to my school's decision to integrate a program called Future Problem Solvers into our middle school curriculum, into the core school day. Future Problem Solvers is an international program where teams of students come together to solve a problem with a global focus. Think education disparity, global health care, poverty, identity theft, and so forth. Future Problem Solver students are learning about history, current events, STEM topics, and more. And there's a research component. So that learning is much more student-centered than the typical textbooks and lectures that we're used to. And best of all, the Future Problem Solver students are learning just in time to engage the creative problem-solving process, not just in case that question or that topic happens to show up on a test a week or so later. And more than learning, Future Problem Solver students are becoming better readers, better researchers, better writers, more collaborative, more empathetic, more globally minded, and best of all, better creative problem solvers. Future Problem Solvers is inherently interdisciplinary, rewards innovative thinking, and best of all, it's fun. And school should be fun. It's real world, it's open-ended, and it feels like a game. As one of the students said to me recently, it actually feels like what grown-ups get to do. Now that seems to me like a pretty great way to spend our students' precious time in school. There are some trade-offs. Our class periods are traditional 45-minute blocks, and so we've had to be more flexible with our use of time. Future Problem Solvers practice sessions tend to be more like 90 minutes. We've had to trade nonfiction reading to prepare for external assessments or meet state standards for nonfiction reading that we do to get ready to craft our solution. And best of all, we've traded rote memorization and drill and kill for an engaging experience that promotes literacy and a passion for learning. And so the point is, we are no longer making our students choose between rigorous academics and opportunities that actively prepare them as future citizens and global leaders. And the best part is not just future problem solvers that can be a powerful program to pull into the core school day. Think about what you did growing up that made you the person that you are today. Was it sports? Maybe it was mock trial, speech and debate, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. Maybe it was broadcast journalism or robotics or 4-H or destination imagination or yearbook or newspaper or a summer job or internship. Maybe it was summer camp. Well, what if your students, your children, had those same opportunities at school? And instead of racing around town on nights and weekends just to supplement what they aren't getting at school, they actually had some more time to have fun, to be kids. It was Einstein who said it's a miracle that curiosity survives formal education, and that quote from over 60 years ago is true today more than ever, but it doesn't have to be. As a parent, educator, and school leader, what concerns me most about this passive, content-obsessed, standardized model of education is that it's preparing Emerson for an economy that no longer exists. And I say it's about time we change that. The 21st century will belong to innovators, and therefore school must be a place where our students are prepared with the skills that will help them creatively solve the world's most pressing problems. As educators, we need to start with reimagining the way in which we use time. Flip the school day, integrate extracurricular activities, prepare our students with the skills and attributes they need to be the global leaders of tomorrow, and they may just have a little bit more fun along the way. Thank you.